Hi, this is Ken Adams, and welcome to this edition of the Valley View. And joining me today is Jenny Meisel from the Marion Water and Soil and Water Conservation District.
Got it.
And you're having a native plant sale coming up.
Yes.
But there's a lot of things I think that we need to talk about besides just the plant sale for people to be thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is spring and people start thinking about planting things.
Right, and it's been really nice spring too, so.
Well, we almost skipped winter.
We did, we kind of did, you're right.
So, so why don't you tell us a little bit about the plant sale? What's available and how do people go to it? And how do they determine what plants are best for them?
Okay, great. So the native plant sale is going to be on Friday and Saturday, March 13th and 14th. So that's next Friday and Saturday next week. And it's at Bauman Farms up in Jervis. So they're off of 99E Howell Prairie Road, kind of just north of Brooks, I guess, is how you get there from Salem. And it'll be 10 to 6 on Friday and 9 to 1 on Saturday. And it's open to the public, anybody can come. We do have limited stock, we only buy a certain amount. So Friday is your best bet to come if you want something special. Saturday we kind of end up selling, whatever's left. Yeah, kind of. So, Friday's kind of the best time to come into the plant sale.
Well, you have a bigger selection.
Well, yeah, we'll have a bigger selection on Friday. And we have over 80 species of native plants. And it's plants that are mostly native to the Willamette Valley here in this area.
So they're acclimated to this particular climate.
Correct. We have a few that might range, out down sort of into southern Oregon or maybe a little bit up into the foothills, but I don't really get anything that's native to eastern Oregon or, too far away or too montane or anything like that. So we try to keep it so they're native to here and that it's the best bet for them to do well in our climate in our region as well.
Now, I would imagine, though, there would be some that do better in shade as opposed to full sun. So you would have to know where the sun is for your yard and where you're thinking of planting.
Right, yeah, you definitely kind of have to have that place in mind of where you want the plants. Some of them will do okay and, part sun, part shade. So, I wouldn't necessarily plant that one strictly on the north side of my house or the south side of the house because you're going to, have differences there. But a lot of them will thrive in fairly varied conditions.
And what are some of the native plants that do particularly well here in the valley that people could consider for their home?
Yeah, there's several different plants. I mean, it kind of depends on the place and how big of a space you have. There's several large trees that do well, but that's not very practical sometimes for for city lots.
Well, yeah, because they tend to be small.
Yeah, smaller lots. So I like to recommend a lot of shrubs sometimes. We have some great flowering shrubs. A lot of them produce berries some of them are edible for humans, like some currants and evergreen huckleberry. Those are edible for humans, but then there's others that are really attractive for birds and pollinators. So red flowering currant is a really popular shrub right now. I think a lot of people have that in their yards, and it gets beautiful hanging clusters of pink, light pink to dark pink flowers. It's actually starting to bloom right now, so it's a pretty early bloomer. And when that blooms is kind of what coincides with the rufous hummingbirds making their migration north. So we're starting to get the first reports of rufous hummingbirds coming into the Willamette Valley in the past couple weeks, and then the red flowering currant are also starting to bloom. Some other plants that I really like, one is called blue blossom. It's a ceanothus, and it's more native kind of to southern Oregon, but it does really well here in the valley. And since it's native to southern Oregon, it does good in kind of sunnier, rockier conditions. So if you have a dry spot in your yard that's real sunny, gets a lot of sun, this blue blossom does great. It gets clusters of bright blue flowers. Not many things are blue that bloom here.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, there's not a lot of blue flowers if you sort of think about it. Like, how many blue things? There's purple things, but there's not like anything that's very particularly blue. And I think this kind of tends more towards the blue than than purple, but it's really attracts a lot of bees and pollinators. It's a great plant. It's also evergreen, which is nice.
Oh, okay. Now, the currants, you can actually have those up against the fence or something, since they're
Yeah, they can make a good hedgerow. Yeah, I have some planted along the fence at my house. They're maybe planted a couple feet away from the fence, and they're doing okay.
Yeah, because I was thinking that would be a nice, instead of seeing the wooden fence, you could see.
Right, and that's exactly what I did in my yard. I planted the red flowering currant with some Douglas spirea and some red osier dogwood that I have along the fence in my yard. So it kind of blooms at different times of the year and looks really pretty.
And so those are the blue and kind of pink. Now, I tend to see a lot of yellow, but I don't know if that's because they're non-native and people plant like daffodils and things like that.
Right, yeah, like right now there's a lot of yellow stuff going on. There's daffodils and there's like forsythia and witch hazel are also shrubs that are blooming right now, and they're very, very yellow. There's a few, we have, it's called black twinberry, and that gets some yellow like tube-shaped flowers that are really great for hummingbirds, and then it gets black, like almost black colored berries. They are not edible for humans, but birds like those.
Well, and they deserve to get something to eat too.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And now, like, are the plants that attract hummingbirds, are those also good for butterflies as well?
Yeah, usually. I mean, the ones that attract hummingbirds tend to kind of have tube-shaped flowers, just because the hummingbirds have that long beak. But if they're big enough, bees and other pollinators can also get inside there. They're not afraid to crawl in and get down in there.
So, it's a lot of times people will go to like a nursery or like Home Depot or someplace to get their plants. And what is the advantage of native plants over those ones that you can get like at, Home Depot, say?
Well, native plants, a lot of the native plants have been adapted to our climate and our conditions here. So when you really think about Oregon and the climate that we have, it's really varied. In the wintertime it's so wet, and in the summertime it's really, really dry. So plants kind of have to really be specialized to handle all that water in the wintertime and then completely dry for a couple months in the summertime. So our native plants are adapted to that. They can handle those stressful conditions. And then also our native plants usually, since they do so well, they don't require a lot of extra fertilizer. They don't usually have a lot of pests and diseases either, so you don't necessarily have to use a lot of pesticides or herbicides to kind of control the environment around them. So that's really a great advantage to having native plants.
And you shouldn't have to do extra watering for them as
well.
Right.
Right. We do recommend when you first purchase and plant native plants that you water them occasionally throughout the first couple years, just to get them established. They have pretty small roots, but once they kind of get established, you don't have to water them as much, if at all. So just kind of depends on how the summer is going, and you might have to add a little supplemental water, but not nearly as much as you would some other plants.
And what are some of the other things that the Soil and Water Conservation District does on a regular basis? I mean, they're having the plant sale, but there's other programs and other things that your group does.
Right. So essentially we are a free resource for landowners in Marion County as far as technical assistance on any sort of natural resource issues and questions and problems that landowners might have. So anybody can stop by or call us up, and with any kind of resource questions. We help a lot of landowners with kind of erosion problems. If they live on a steep hill or something like that, we can help them with that. We help a lot of landowners who live along streams or waterways. We help them kind of protect their riparian area, or that area along the waterway. So instead of it being all full of weeds, we like to make it full of native plants, because that'll help hold in the stream bank. We want to make sure they have a healthy riparian area. We work with a lot of farmers to help them with things on their property. We do lots of stuff. We have education programs, so we go out to schools. We take schools on field trips. We have grant programs that can assist landowners financially with some of these projects that they're doing on their property. Some particular projects are like creating wildlife habitat, like planting native plants to attract wildlife and providing wildlife and pollinator habitat. So our grant programs will help with all of that too. It's called the Landowner Assistance Program is our one major grant program.
And also, one of the things that I think about too is sometimes I have plants in the yard and I don't know if they're native or not. And you can identify those so that if I'm thinking of keeping them or maybe getting rid of them, you can help in that decision process.
Yeah, definitely. People can bring plants into us or send me a picture, or there's lots of online resources too. The Oregon Flora Project is a really great online resource that has lots of photos, and they're cataloging all of the native plants in Oregon. And it's a really great website. It's got lots of pictures. I use it all the time to look for pictures and look up stuff.
And they probably have pictures for what they look like during the different seasons, so you can identify them, you know, whatever season it happens to be. Because plants do change.
They do, yeah, they change a lot. Like in the wintertime, they don't have any leaves or anything on them. A lot of them don't, so yeah.
So also, as far as like, the other thing that I see is sometimes people are thinking about cutting down a tree because it's shading the house too much or something like that. But you know, and you were talking about on city lots sometimes, you know, you don't want big trees and like that. But if it's a native tree, isn't it better to try to keep it as opposed to, you know, getting rid of it, if at all possible?
Right. I mean, having big trees on your property and your lot in the city is definitely an advantage if it's not causing problems, if it's not diseased or breaking down or causing trouble or causing problems, because there's lots of other benefits of large trees is that their roots help soak up a lot of water. So you help prevent that runoff from, you know, that gets into the whole stormwater runoff and thing like that. But
and it helps keep flooding down.
It helps keep flooding down, yeah. It helps water infiltrate back into the soil instead of running off and running into the street or causing flooding or things like
even localized flooding, like at the intersections of busy streets.
So we really want to kind of promote and encourage large trees if we can. But you know, some people's yards just don't have the capacity to hold on to some of those, to support those large trees. But you know, even if it's not native, it's still providing a canopy and providing that resource, you know, the shade that helps cool your home in the summertime, you know, and things like that. It still has those roots too. But you know, I wouldn't go cut down a tree just because it's not native, you know, if it's in the city. But, you know, that would be kind of up to an arborist to look at too. If it's diseased or something like that, that would be kind of up to their decision.
Yeah, because I have a tree on my property that evidently the previous owner cut it back severely and parts of it rotted.
Oh,
but it's kind of an interesting tree, and it has like these little berries or something. Actually, they're kind of about pea-shaped, and they got like a little nut inside of them, and the birds do seem to like them. So I've been avoiding trying to take the rest of it down, but it's you know, it's not over the roof or anything.
Yeah, and if it's not causing problems for you, I think it's probably okay to leave it. It just, you know, depends if you want to keep it there or not.
Yeah, well, I mean, it helps shade that portion of the yard, and like it's on the east side of the house, so in the afternoon it's a lot cooler over there. I know the dog likes to go over there and lay down because it's nice and cool. But that's an example of trying to keep things, you know, somewhat stable so that you do have some shade. Because to me, I quite often before I moved here to Salem, I lived in suburbs where they would, you know, take all the vegetation out basically, and plant these little sapling trees, and it'd be forever before you saw any shade. And I really appreciate having shady trees when I go for a walk and like that.
Yeah, and the city of Salem is actually working on increasing their urban tree canopy too. So they have programs all about that. They just did a big survey recently within the past few years on urban tree canopy. So they're really trying to focus on getting some of those larger trees in the city and trying to help create shade and for the stormwater reasons and infiltration reasons that I was just mentioning.
Yeah, and so if they have so if you have a kind of a new house, you can consult with the city then to see what kind of native trees might be available for you?
I think they have specific recommendations for street trees that they'd want you to plant near the street, like in your parking
Between the
strip.
sidewalk
Yeah,
and
between the sidewalk
and
the curb, whatever you tend to call that area, I guess. So, because they just don't want them to get too big or too large and cause a nuisance. But anybody, you could contact me for native plant recommendations. I'm happy to come out and take a look at it. Or, based on where your area is, I'm happy to help give recommendations for plants to put in people's yards.
And so what are some of the other functions that the Marion Soil and Water Conservation District does on a regular basis?
We get phone calls, quite often from people. I mean, I just had a phone call earlier today, a woman who lives out on Mill Creek between Turner and Almsville. She's like, we have this tree growing along the creek, and it grows so fast, and I don't know what it is, and I think it's invasive, and I need help, and I want to get rid of it, and I want to know what it is, but I'm not sure what it is. And so I'm going to go out there on Monday and take a look at it and see what it is and see if I can help her figure out what it is. They're kind of worried because it's right along the creek, so they don't want to do anything that would be detrimental or damaging to the creek. But I sort of suspect that she might have Japanese or giant knotweed, from what it's sounding like, which is a pretty bad invasive plant that grows here in Western Oregon.
A tree. It's
she was calling it a tree, but I think the knotweed, giant knotweed, can get 15 feet tall in a year, and she was telling me that it grows really, really fast, and which it does. It dies back every year and then grows 15 feet every single year. That's
pretty impressive.
It is. It is pretty impressive, the growth that plant puts on, and it spreads vegetatively through underground rhizomes. So it just keeps sending up new sprouts, and it's really aggressive and really, really difficult to get rid of once it gets a hold.
And would that be a problem along like Mill Creek?
Yeah, it's definitely a problem. It has a really strong root structure, but it doesn't go really, really deep. So it can help facilitate erosion. It doesn't do a good job of holding in the stream bank, and then it grows so densely that it just completely crowds out everything else in its path. So it'll crowd out all sorts of native plants that would be more desirable along the creek.
Well, that is a concern.
Mm-hmm.
And because
it definitely is.
I remember when I was a youngster, we lived along a creek, and there were some trees that were, their root systems were really deep and really held, but there were some others that weren't. And they would usually end up falling into the creek and taking a bunch of soil with it.
Right.
And so that's kind of a normal kind of progression sometimes.
Right, and around here blackberries are very similar. So you see blackberries along creeks a lot of the times, and they also don't have a very strong root structure. So
but they keep coming back.
They do keep coming back. They're another one of those invasive plants that we want to try to get rid of and not have those either. So.
Well, I quite often go out to Minnow Brown, and I notice periodically they'll try to cut down strips of that, but I would think that what I've seen is they'll cut it one year and then not cut it again for a while, and in the meantime it just comes back.
Right. Repeated mowing is best if they really want to try to keep that down. That's one way to do it.
But I don't know. One of my first impressions of Oregon, for the first time when I drove up here, and this is probably about 30, 40 years ago, I saw people along the freeways collecting blackberries.
Right,
that was one of my first impressions of Oregon. Wow, they just stopped by the freeway and picked their fruit.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, but I mean, it's what people do.
Right, but they're delicious. I'm not going to deny that, but they're not a desirable plant to have,
And so what's the difference between, like, the blackberries we see and Marion berries? Now, are Marion berries actually natives? I would imagine, since that's what they're called, but I'm not sure.
I'm not exactly sure, but I think they might be a cultivar of blackberry. So they're a different type of blackberry. So I think specifically created for the industry.
Oh, okay. So it's not something...
I don't think it's something that is native or anything like that to the area. There is a native blackberry. It's called trailing blackberry. It's a native plant, and it just grows. It's just a little spindly kind of a vine that grows along the ground. It doesn't grow up into a big, huge shrub like the invasive blackberry. you can almost, it's pretty easy to miss if you don't really know what you're looking for. But if you're out kind of walking through the forest, it's usually the thing that ends up tripping you when you're walking through, because it just is this little tiny vine. It does get edible berries on it that taste pretty good. They're not quite as good as the invasive blackberries, and they're much
it's kind
smaller.
of like wild strawberries, because they do that. They're kind of low little vines.
Yep. There's wild strawberries that are native too.
Oh, there are here?
Yep. There's native wild strawberries too.
Oh, okay, because I have some in my yard, and I didn't, it seemed kind of surprising that somebody would plant those. So they may actually be native?
They might be native. If they're native strawberries get real small.
Yeah.
Tiny berries, like maybe dime size or smaller.
Yeah, that's about the size that they are.
Yeah, they could be native ones.
Oh, okay.
Definitely.
They don't have a whole lot of taste.
Yeah, they don't. I mean, because the berries that we grow in our garden are bred specifically to be big and taste good, and
Right. But the thing is they look nice, and I like leaving them alone. And the birds do sometimes eat them, not very often, but they. So if people want to get a hold of you to find out, or someone from the Marion Soil and Water Conservation District, how can they go about doing that? We'll have the credits up at the end, but why don't you go ahead and tell people how to do that?
Yeah, so our office is on Hawthorne. We're at 338 Hawthorne Ave Northeast, so we're between State and Center Streets. We're open from 8 to 5 every day, so you can just stop on by and come visit us. We're open to the public. We're a local government agency, so we're open to the public, so anybody can stop by. Our phone number is 391-9927, so you can give us a call. There's other resource conservationists like myself that are there to answer questions. So there's several of us that can help you out. And we have a website, marionswcd.net, that also has lots of resources on it as well.
And so this is an actual government entity.
Yeah, we're considered a local government agency, so we're not county, we're not city, we're not state. We're considered a special district. So like fire districts are special districts, but we function within the boundaries of Marion County, and we're governed, we have a board of directors that helps decide what we do.
Where the emphasis needs to be put.
Right, exactly.
And so you're having this native plant sale on March 13th and 14th.
Correct.
And are there other events that you have similar throughout the year, or is this pretty much the main focus?
Yeah, the plant sale is kind of one of our biggest events that we host and we put on, but we attend several other events throughout the county throughout the year. We attend Ag Fest at the Oregon Fairgrounds, at the State Fairgrounds. That's in late April. We put on a high school environmental science competition called Envirothon. We have that up at the Oregon Garden. That's in May, and that's where teams from all over the state come, and it's a hands-on competition, so they're tested on 5 different topics, and we determine the state winner and then take them to National Envirothon competition that happens every year. We go out to Salem Saturday Market every now and then and have a booth there just so people can come up and ask questions, get some information from us. So yeah, we attend a lot of outreach events and things like that too.
Yeah, and the Saturday Market's a fun place to be in.
Yeah,
right?
Saturday Market's a great place. I love doing Saturday Market. We do it once a month. We'll be doing it in, I think, May, June, July, and August this year.
And so your main emphasis is to make sure that the soil and the water in this area are being protected and built up.
Right.
And it's always been my impression of the Willamette Valley has extremely good soil, that this is some of the actual prime soil in the United States, not just in Oregon.
Yeah, we have lots of agriculture here, so they're definitely taking advantage of that.
and because of the rainfall and the rest of the climate conditions, it does create a really healthy environment. So it's better for us to keep that as opposed to tearing it up and doing other things with it. And the reason why I kind of bring this up is I was born in Oklahoma and lived in Oklahoma and Kansas, and one of the things that happened there was during World War I, they'd plow up the prairie to plant wheat so that they could sell it for high profits while World War I was going on. But they kept on doing that, and then like some years the rain didn't come and the soil would blow away, and this happened in the late 20s and during
Right,
the 30s.
right.
And even when I was young, I'd still see huge dust storms where I couldn't even see across the street to the homes there. And see, that's part of the thing that, maybe not here in Oregon, but a lot of people have lost because it's so long ago.
Right.
But the thing is that nature kind of works in balance. And they create plants that hold the soil well for that climate. And when you start affecting that and tearing it up, you lose that ability, especially when you monocrop as a result.
Right, yeah. So a lot of the farmers, that we work with, they really try to take care of their land and their soil to make sure that it's, available for the next generation and things like that. So we do work with a lot of farmers who really want to be sustainable and do the right thing. And I think it's really funny that you kind of brought up the Dust Bowl is kind of what you alluded to. And essentially the Dust Bowl is what spurred the creation of soil and water conservation districts. So across the entire United States. So that was kind of the main reason why soil and water conservation districts were started, because they didn't want that to ever happen again.
Right.
So create that local resource to help people on a more local level.
Yeah, and one of the other things that came out is planting hedgerows, so that to protect it from the wind, and also to rotate your crops, if you're farming, so that you in some years you might even let it lie fallow, so that it kind of replenishes itself.
Right, yeah, there's lots of different farming and management practices, and we do help landowners with that too. We can help them with hedgerows, give them recommendations of what plants to plant for hedgerows. We're starting to really encourage a lot of hedgerows. I've helped some landowners put in hedgerows. It's really great for wildlife and pollinators, and then again for the soil and things like that. But yeah, farm management is really important too. So the crop rotation, like you said, and make sure that you keep healthy soil and soil building, and adding organic material and the right fertilizers and the right things to kind of keep your soil healthy.
Yeah, I remember my grandfather was always saying that you have to have like beans or peas once every 3 years, because they help put nitrogen back into the soil.
Nitrogen. Yeah, and the land managers and the farmers and the ag people all kind of, they know what to do, and they've been sort of doing that for years and years and years. So they kind of, most places, if you're a large scale farm, they probably have their rotations already down and figured out.
Well, is there any other part of the subject that we haven't covered that you'd like to talk about at this point?
Oh gosh, maybe, I guess we didn't really touch too much on native plants and how they're a great benefit for wildlife and pollinators too. So a lot of pollinators, a lot of our native plants and pollinators sort of evolved together. So there's some pollinators and wildlife species that depend on one particular plant species, like the Fender's blue butterfly and the Kincaid's lupin. That's one of a great example here in the Willamette Valley. They're both endangered species because we're losing our prairie habitats, but they both live in Willamette Valley prairies. So the Fender's blue butterfly relies solely on the Kincaid's lupin. So we need to have that lupin to have the butterfly. So it's kind of an interesting concept.
Well, and that's how we talk about nature balancing itself.
Right.
And species adapt to that environment. Well, Jenny, I want to thank you for coming in and giving us some insight into what Marion Soil and Water Conservation District does, and about the plant sale, because I think that's it's a fun activity.
Right, it is really fun.
And to see what's actually native to this area. So I want to thank you for coming in.
Great, thanks for having me.
And we'll be back next time with the Valley View.